On Friday, Eater San Francisco published an article. I was so incensed by the copy and the viewpoint of the new restaurant that it featured that I immediately posted a short but heavily critical note in an Instagram post. The post was, at its best, underthought out, and at its worst, trollish. Many folks in my network gave me that feedback, so today I want to explain in more detail why the article was so frustrating. Now, I want to start by saying that while I took umbrage with the viewpoint portrayed, I'm not trying to badmouth another small business. The Bay Area is a hard place to operate in, and I wish success to anyone who takes on the stressors and challenges of operating. That doesn't, however, give us a free pass. So the article was entitled, "With $10 Spaghetti and Stellar Meatballs, Sfizio is out to prove fresh pasta can actually be affordable." On the surface, this sounds great. So egalitarian, so proletariat. Affordability, that's great. And yet, what is unstated and unchallenged by the journalist is that focusing only on affordability and comparing it to other restaurants is a political statement. In a 4-paragraph article, some form of the word affordable is used 7 times. Independent and lower volume restaurants are not necessarily great business models. The national average in 2022 was a 3 to 5% profit. That means that for every dollar spent at a restaurant, ownership netted 3 to 5 pennies. If the business was opened with investors or debt, they would then have to split those 3 to 5 pennies according to their agreements with the bank or investors. There are 3 very important financial categories in determining the financial success of a restaurant: cost of goods sold, labor costs, and occupancy cost. When vetting restaurant deals, savvy operators and investors look at the likelihood that those categories can be managed effectively. All these categories are looked at as a percentage of sales or revenue, so using the same dollar example as I said before. Cost of goods sold, sometimes truncated to food cost, represents the cost of purchasing anything directly related to a menu item. This is everything from cheese and meat to pizza boxes to a bottle of beer or wine. Traditionally, this wouldn't include things like plastic wrap or cleaning supplies. Now, the range for most restaurants is somewhere between 20 and 40%. So for every dollar bought in, 20 to 40 pennies would be used to pay for cost of goods sold. In many restaurant models, COGS cost and labor cost impact each other, which is to say, some restaurants like a pasta or pizza restaurant might be able to have a lower food cost because of the basic ingredients, flour, water, salt, etc. But the flip side is they end up spending more on labor, cost to make the pasta, pizza dough, etc. Labor cost is exactly what it sounds like. It is the direct and indirect cost of paying for the employees in the restaurant. Generally, managers are responsible for managing direct labor, which is to say the hourly wages of employees, and leadership and ownership makes decisions that affect indirect labor. These are things like insurance, PTO, other benefits. For most restaurants, even those with service charges, labor is a cost that is hardest to manage. Industry ranges for combined labor costs are anywhere from 30 to 50%, meaning for every dollar spent at the restaurant, 30 to 50 pennies are spent on labor. I had a friend who last year, failing to find willing employees, started giving out cash bonuses for folks to show up. His 2022 labor cost was 70%. That means for every dollar he brought in, 70 pennies went out the door. Now, as much as I love and respect the guy, I think there are a lot of reasons why employees might not want to work, but it's a great cautionary tale. For me as an owner-operator, labor cost is one of the parts of my business that I gave the most thought to. When I was setting up the operational model of Square Pie Guys, my goal was to create efficiencies that would allow us to pay competitive wages while maintaining a healthy business. And I'm proud to say that with tips and our tips guarantee program, all SPG employees were achieving a living wage. While I won't give out specific details, SPG also enjoyed enviable margins outside. For savvy operators, a restaurant is judged on its ability to manage food and labor cost as one metric. And if that number, traditionally called prime cost, is below 60%, there's a solid chance that restaurant will be profitable even beyond the industry average. Plenty of successful restaurant groups are actually achieving closer to 50 to 55% prime cost. Well, why did I care so much about labor? Well, it pains me to say that most folks working in the industry, especially in cities with a high cost of living, which basically feels like every city these days, can't afford to buy a house. That classic middle-class experience is not accessible for most entry to mid-level restaurant employees, and I would love to be part of that change. The final cost category that's important for restaurants, at least for this video, is occupancy. Now, occupancy is sliced and diced by folks a ton of different ways, but for most operators, it includes the cost of the lease to the space, as well as utilities, any equipment rentals, and for some, city permits. A healthy restaurant spends less than 10% of their sales on occupancy, so less than 10 pennies for every dollar brought in, and many operators target 6%, 6 pennies, or lower. Keep in mind, too, that once a lease is signed, it's almost unheard of for that amount to change, other than to, go up. So if an operator signs a lease more expensive than the volume they generate can pay for, they're going to be in trouble. If you add all these up, you start to see the percentage of revenue that is spent just to keep the lights on. The other costs that accrue are less important in the sense that they are a relatively level playing field. Everyone needs to pay for accounting or bookkeeping, linen service, credit card fees, etc. While different models might have these costs fluctuate slightly, specifically based on service, as a percentage of overall revenue, they are much less impactful on the overall bottom line. Keeping prime cost and occupancy costs down are the most important factors in a sustainable business model. Now, given what I've discussed, maybe you can start to see why I find the premise of decontextualized affordability so offensive. I have no problem with a business model that has been optimized to deliver value to guests, management, and employees alike. But when the only talking point is affordability, the message I hear, and I think lots of readers hear, is food at restaurants is too expensive. This reinforces a negative trend in our society to devalue skilled labor achieved by manual workers and to continue to overvalue, only by comparison, knowledge-only work. Having spent my career in both restaurants and startups, I can tell you without a doubt, the stressors of missing a corporate deadline or a software bug popping up over the weekend pale in comparison to a busy Friday night shift in the dish pit. Cost management in restaurants is in direct relation to the revenue brought in. When an implication of food being too expensive is leveled, it is an inherently political act. For many cuisines, especially those that are considered ethnic, there is a societal cap to how much they can charge for food. Put a $20 burger on a menu and no one blinks an eye. Charge $20 for a burrito that has the same quality of meat and the same portion size, and all of a sudden, it's outrageous. So for a white male chef, which I am part of that group, to say he's trying to make food cheaper, he is continuing to tamp down what folks can charge. And for those who don't get eater write-ups when they launch, this can be very, very harmful to their overall success. When menu prices are tamped down, the availability for spending on labor and food goes down. That means either the guests will be getting less value than they expect, or that the money available for wages is less, or sometimes both. I have no problem with restaurant operators who've devised business models that work for all stakeholders, and there are plenty of them. I've often dreamed of translating the neighborhood bistro or brasserie to something modern, sexy enough for a Friday night date, but accessible and healthy enough for a Tuesday night. No doubt part of my story would discuss relative affordability, but I would contextualize that conversation with the intentional business decisions made to deliver an incredible experience for all guests, living wages or better for employees, and a profit margin that makes it worthwhile. Food is political, no doubt about it. For those of us lucky enough to get press, we have a unique responsibility, not just to our business and our team, but to the rest of the industry and those who read food media. With great power comes great responsibility.